Alright, so we are solving multi-step equations, but first we're going to learn how to write equivalent equations, and then we're going to learn how to solve them. So these equivalent equations are multi-step equations, but we're going to learn how to write equivalent ones first before we solve. So writing equivalent equations. Alright, so we have two methods to do this. Method 1, we are going to find an equivalent expression by adding or subtracting a variable. And we're going to do exactly what it says. Add or subtract a variable. Okay. So if we have an example of 2x plus 4 equals x plus 6. That's an equation, a multi-step equation. I want to be able to write an equivalent equation. So somebody tell me what an equivalent equation means. If they're equivalent, what does that mean?
They're equal.
They're equal, so that means they have the same answer. Okay. So method 1 tells me that I can either add or subtract a variable in order to get an equivalent equation. So my variable, that means I've got a 2x over here and x over here. So if I add or subtract one of those, which one do I need to do?
The 2x.
Why? Would I have to add it or subtract it? Subtract it. So wouldn't that give me a negative number?
Yes.
So what if I subtract the x first, since it's lesser value? It's going to give me a positive number. So let's subtract the x from both sides. You can do the 2x. It doesn't matter.
What does x equal?
We don't know. But we're not going to solve it just yet. All we're doing is just writing equivalent equations right now, and then we're going to solve them later. So I subtract x from both sides, and that cancels out these, and it leaves me with x plus 4 equals 6. These cross out because I have a 1x minus a 1x. So 1 minus 1 gives me 0, right?
Oh, and that's 2x.
And then, yes, this is 2x minus 1x, so that leaves me with 1x. Okay. So, guys, I don't know why you're talking. So, this tells me that these two equations right here are equivalent equations. Not yet.
So is all you just do, just complete the x and become equivalent?
Mm-hmm. Because we did it to both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other in order to remain equality. So since we did it to both sides, that's why they're still equivalent equations. Okay. So 2x plus 4 equals x plus 6 is equivalent to x plus 4 equals 6. Right? That's method 1. Let's look at method 2, because we can have more than just one equivalent equation. So if we do it another way, we can add or subtract a number instead of a variable. So method 2 is adding or subtracting a number. Ben. I'm going to use the same example. So 2x plus 4 equals x plus 6. Alright, so if it's telling me that I can add or subtract a number, I'm going to do exactly that. But which number do I want to add or subtract? Olivia. The 4, because it's smaller than 6, and it's going to leave me with a positive number. So I want to subtract 4 from both sides. So then these 4 cancel, And it leaves me with 2x is equal to x.
So it's
What?
negative 2.
What's 6 minus 4? 6 minus 4? Positive 2.
Oh,
So 2x equals x plus 2.
but I thought if it was like that's positive 6 and negative, it always negative.
That's only if your first number is smaller than your last number. This is just a normal subtraction, 6 minus 4. So, this tells me that these two equations are equivalent. So since I used the same example, that means that this equation, this equation, this equation, and this equation are all equivalent, meaning that they all had the same answer if you solve for x. Okay. So let's do an example like the book. So the book is going to ask you to write an equivalent equation and justify.
What does it mean by justify?
We're going to figure it out. Sorry, I can't write. Write an equivalent equation and justify your answer. To write an equivalent equation and justify your answer. So we're going to take 3x minus 4 equals x minus 6. Okay. And we're going to write an equivalent equation to that and then justify it. So I can use either one of my methods. So which method do you want to use first?
Number 1.
Number 1, so that tells me that I can do what?
Add or subtract.
What?
A variable.
A variable. So which variable should I subtract or add? X. It's a positive x, so that means I've got to subtract it from both sides. So when I do that, that leaves me with 2x minus 4 equals negative 6. Because 3x minus x gives me 2x. That's a 1x, right? 3x minus 1x. So this is an equivalent equation to 3x minus 4 equals x minus 6. But now remember, I've got to justify it. So how do you think I can justify it? Tell me how you did it. So what did we do in order to find this equivalent equation?
Subtract the x from both sides.
So just tell me that. By subtracting x from both sides. That's all I want when it tells you to justify your answer. So you're just telling me how you got the equivalent equation.
That would be easy.
But remember, there's more than one answer, right? There's more than one equivalent equation. So I'm just going to ask you to do one, but for the notes, we're going to do both ways. Okay. So if I have the problem again, 3x minus 4 equals x minus 6. I already subtracted my variable, so what if I do the number? What if I subtract the number? Subtract or add?
Subtract.
Why do I need to subtract 4? If I subtract 4, wouldn't that give me a negative 8? I'm wanting to move that completely over.
So you add.
So I've got to add 4. Remember, we're still doing the opposite. So if I do that, those cancel. And it leaves me with 3x equals x, what? Negative 2, so minus 2. So this is also an equivalent equation. And how did I do that? How do I justify that answer?
By telling what you did.
And what did I do?
You added 4 to both sides.
Good. So by adding 4 to both sides. Questions on equivalent equations? So you're not solving for x. All you're doing is just telling me what's an equivalent equation. Okay, so those should be pretty simple. We good on that? Alright, let's learn how to solve them now. So, we're going to learn how to solve multi-step equations, which is what these are called, multi-step equations. Yesterday we did two-step equations. Today we're doing multi-step, so that means there's normally more than two steps. So solving multi-step equations. And then there's two steps, so I want you to go ahead and write down the two steps, and then we're going to talk about them and see what it really means, how to do it. Okay. So I want you to write down just those two steps right there. So use subtraction, or can y'all read that? Properties of equality. Sorry. Use subtraction of addition properties of equality to get all variables to one side of the equal sign and all constants to the other side. And then solve. When you're done copying this down, put your pencil down so I know you're done. Yes, to the other side. Are we done copying? Alright. So, we are using only the subtraction or addition properties of equality so that we can get all of my variables on one side of the equal sign and all of my constants on one side of the equal sign. Okay. Once I do that, then I can start using my multiplication and division properties of equality to solve for x. Okay. So, I will only be adding or subtracting in order to get all constants on one side and all variables on one side. Once I do that, then I can multiply or divide to solve for x. Okay, so let's look at an example. All right, example 1. 7x. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Rylan, why don't you go ahead and write down your homework up there. And then you can finish watching this online. Okay. Alright, so I've got 7x equals 5x plus 6. So I'm going to use my addition or subtraction properties. I want to get my variables on one side and my constants on one side. So here I've got 7x on the right and 5x on the left and a 6 on the left. So which side do I need to get my x's on? Left, because I already have one x over here. Over here I have an x and a constant. So I can move this x over to give me x's on one side and constants on one side. So how can I move that 5x over? Subtract. It's a positive 5x, so that means I've got to do the opposite. So I'm subtracting 5x from both sides. So then my 5x's cancel on the right, and it leaves me with 2x is equal to what? 6. Now my variables are on the left, my constants are on the right. So that means I need to solve for x. So how can I solve for x? Dominique. Divide both sides by 2? Good. If I divide both sides by 2, then those 2's cancel, and x is equal to what? 3. Good. Questions? Let's check it to see if I'm right. So I'm checking it. I'm plugging in 3 for x. So that means I have 7 times 3 equals 5 times 3 plus 6. Guys, we should all be writing this down. What's 7 times 3? What's 5 times 3? So I have 21 equals 21. So that means my answer of x equals 3 is correct. Questions on that? So the first thing you're doing is getting all constants to one side and all variables to one side. Doesn't matter which side, as long as they are on opposite sides of the equal sign. And then you're solving for x. Let's do one more example. Alright, I've got 3x minus 2 equals x plus 10. Alright, so I want to get all my x's on one side and all my constants on one side. So how do I do that, Amaya?
Subtract 10 from both sides.
Okay. If I subtract 10 from both sides, I have negative 2 minus 10. Is that going to give me a negative?
No.
Do I like negatives?
No.
Not really. So what if I do the opposite? What if I add 2 to 10? Will that give me a positive?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's do that instead. You can subtract 10 from both sides. That's fine. You're still going to get the same answer. Okay? I just want you to kind of pay attention and see which one's going to be the better option before you actually do it. Okay? Because obviously if I'm adding 2 to both sides, that's going to make my life a little bit easier. Okay? So these 2's cancel, which leaves me with 3x equals x plus what? 12. Not yet.
Not yet.
Remember, I can only divide or multiply once all my constants are on one side and all my variables are on one side. Here, I still have an x on both sides. So I need to get my x's to one side.
So you have to
Subtract what?
3.
X, right? Because I want this x to come over here with my 3x. So I want to subtract x from both sides.
2x.
Okay, good. So that means I have 2x equals 12. Now I have all my variables on the left and all my constants on the right. Now I can multiply or divide. Olivia. Why would it stay the same? Because it's not a like term with my x's. So I can't combine it with x's. I'm only subtracting x. from the right-hand side. So that means I have to subtract x from the left-hand side. I can't do anything with x's in the 12.
So you divide 2,
I want to divide both sides by 2.
and you get 6.
6. Good. X equals 6. If I check it, that means I have 3 times 6 minus 2 equals 6 plus 10. 3 times 6 gives me 18. What's 6 plus 10? 16. So then 18 minus 2 is 16, which equals 16, so I'm correct. Questions? Yes, ma'am. We good on this one? One more example. Five x minus 12 equals 3x minus 2. What do I need to do first? Samuel. Okay. So if I do that, that leaves me with 5x on the left, and then 3x plus what? Negative 2 plus 12? 10. So now I have all my constants on the right, so that means I need to get my x's, my variables, on the left. So that means I've got to subtract 3x from both sides. So when I do that, I get 2x equals 10. How do I solve for x now? Divide by what? 2. On both sides. So x is equal to what? 5. Questions? Pretty easy? If I check it, I have 5 times 5 minus 12 equals 3 times 5 minus 2. So then 5 times 5 gives me what? 25. 3 times 5 is 15. What's 25 minus 12?
13.
What's 15 minus 2?
13.
Questions?
I need help to
You need them? You haven't copied them?
because we're not stuffed up.
Okay. Alright, your homework for today is page 238, numbers 11 through 31 odd. Solve and check.